My name is Michael Carter, and for as long as I can remember, I've been a skeptic. I believed in facts, science, and reason, things you could see, measure, and prove. To me, faith in God was nothing more than wishful thinking, a comforting story for those who couldn't face the reality of life and death. I didn't hate religion, but I saw it as irrelevant, a relic of the past that had no place in a rational world. But then one day, my world changed. In an instant, a heart attack struck me out of nowhere, and for several minutes I was clinically dead. What I experienced during those moments defied everything I thought I knew. I didn't just see something, I felt it, lived it, and was changed by it. It was as though the truth had been waiting for me all along, and in those moments of death, it was revealed in a way I couldn't deny. What I'm about to share with you is deeply personal, but I know it's not just for me, it's for anyone who has ever questioned the meaning of life, wondered if there's more, or doubted the existence of something greater. This is the story of how I, a lifelong atheist, was given a second chance, and the truth that was shown to me when I died. Before the heart attack, my life could be described in one word: comfortable. I lived in Chicago, Illinois, worked as an accountant, and enjoyed a stable, predictable routine. I had a good career, a supportive group of friends, and hobbies that kept me busy. From the outside, it looked like I had everything figured out. But if you had asked me about God or faith, I would have laughed it off. I grew up in a household where religion wasn't a priority. My parents weren't particularly devout, and by the time I was a teenager, I had abandoned the idea of God altogether. Science classes in school cemented my beliefs, or lack thereof. Evolution, physics, and biology explained the universe, I thought. There was no need for a higher power. I saw religion as a way for people to cope with the unknown, but I didn't feel that need myself. I was content with the idea that when you die, that's it. No afterlife, no soul, just oblivion. By the time I reached adulthood, my skepticism had turned into a quiet certainty. I didn't go out of my way to argue with people about their beliefs, but I was dismissive of religion as a whole. I prided myself on being a rational thinker, someone who didn't rely on superstition or fairy tales to get through life. Faith, I believed, was for the weak, and I was anything but weak. Looking back now, I see how pride shaped my views. I didn't just doubt the existence of God. I rejected the very idea of needing Him. I wanted to be in control of my life, to make my own decisions and to take credit for my own success. The thought of surrendering to something greater than myself felt foreign, even ridiculous. I told myself that I didn't need God to be a good person or to live a meaningful life. But deep down, I never asked myself what that meaning was. The day of the heart attack started like any other. It was a Friday evening, and I had just finished work. I stopped by the gym for a quick workout, then went home to make dinner. I remember feeling unusually tired, but I brushed it off as stress from the week. As I sat down to eat, a sharp pain shot through my chest. At first, I thought it was indigestion, but within seconds, the pain became unbearable. My vision blurred, and I felt myself slipping away. The last thought I had was a mix of disbelief and fear. This can't be happening. I'm not ready. What happened next defied everything I believed in. It was the beginning of a journey that would change my life forever. The moment I closed my eyes, I expected it to be the end. For someone who believed death was just the final curtain, I braced myself for nothingness. But instead of fading into oblivion, I became aware of something else entirely: myself. I wasn't in my body anymore, but I still existed. It was as if my consciousness had been separated from the physical world, floating in a place that felt both empty and infinite. At first, I was surrounded by darkness. It wasn't frightening, but it wasn't comforting either. It felt neutral, almost like a waiting room. Then, out of the distance, I saw a faint light. It was small at first, like a flickering star, but it grew brighter and closer with each passing moment. I couldn't look away. The light didn't just illuminate the space around me, it seemed to illuminate me, revealing everything I had ever been, everything I had ever done. As the light approached, I felt something I couldn't describe, an overwhelming sense of being known. It was as if this light, this presence, could see every part of me, my thoughts, my actions, my doubts, and my pride. And yet, instead of judgment, I felt love, a love so deep and pure that it overwhelmed me. I wanted to move closer to it, to stay in its warmth forever, but at the same time, I felt unworthy. Then the light spoke, not with words, but directly to my soul. "Michael," it said, "you have spent your life denying me, but I have never denied you." The weight of those words hit me like a wave. I knew instantly who was speaking. It was God. The very existence I had dismissed my entire life was now undeniable, standing before me in a form of love and truth that I couldn't argue with or escape. Suddenly, the space around me shifted. I was no longer floating in darkness. Instead, I was shown scenes from my life, like a movie playing before my eyes. But these weren't just memories. They were moments viewed from a new perspective. I saw myself as a child, curious and full of wonder, asking questions about the world. I saw the teenage version of me, pushing away anything that couldn't be explained by logic. And then I saw the adult I had become, closed, off-prideful, and so sure of my own beliefs that I never considered I could be wrong. I was shown moments where I had chosen selfishness over kindness, where I had hurt others with my words or actions, often without realizing it. But I was also shown the ripple effect of my choices, the ways my actions had impacted the people around me, the good and the bad. The missed opportunities to show love, the times I could have listened but didn't. It wasn't condemnation, it was clarity. I understood for the first time the weight of my decisions and how they shaped not only my life, but the lives of those around me. Then, the light showed me something I will never forget. I was taken to a place that felt utterly empty, a void filled with people wandering aimlessly. They weren't being punished, but they were lost. They were consumed by regret, longing for something they couldn't reach. It wasn't hell as I had imagined it. There was no fire or torment, but the separation from the light was a torment in itself. These people had chosen to live apart from God, and now they were experiencing the full reality of that choice. "This is not where you are meant to be," the voice said gently, "but the choices you make determine the path you follow. Every decision matters, no matter how small." I felt tears streaming down my face. Not physical tears, but a deep sorrow that came from realizing how much I had missed, how many chances I had ignored to choose love, to choose connection, to choose God. Then the light shifted again, and I was back in its presence. "Michael," the voice said, "you have been given a second chance. Your story is not finished. Return and share what you have seen, so that others may find their way back to me. It is never too late, and no one is too far." Egon. The words filled me with hope, but also with fear. How could I go back and explain this to anyone? How could I share what I had seen without sounding delusional? But the light, the love, and the truth I had experienced left no room for doubt. I knew I had to try. As the light began to fade, I felt myself being pulled back. The warmth and peace of the light were replaced by the heaviness of my physical body. With a jolt, I opened my eyes. I was back in the hospital, surrounded by the frantic sounds of doctors and nurses. My chest ached, my body was weak, but my spirit felt alive in a way it never had before. I had been given a second chance, and I knew I couldn't waste it. When I opened my eyes in the hospital, I felt like I had been reborn. My body was weak, but my mind was overwhelmed by the vivid memories of what I had just experienced. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a hallucination. It was real, more real than anything I had ever known, and it came with a message that I couldn't ignore. Your story is not finished. Share what you have seen. In the days that followed, as I recovered physically, I found myself replaying the vision over and over in my mind. The light, the voice, the love I felt, it was undeniable. But just as clear was the image of the place of separation I had seen, those wandering souls, lost. In regret and longing, weren't there because God had abandoned them. They were there because they had chosen to live apart from Him, just as I had. And yet, the light had given me hope, a second chance to live differently, to reconnect with the truth I had spent my life denying. At first, I didn't know how to process what had happened. My entire worldview had been shattered, and I felt like a stranger in my own life. I looked at the books on my shelves, the debates I had watched, the articles I had written dismissing faith, and I realized how deeply rooted my pride had been. For years, I had been so focused on proving that God didn't exist that I had closed myself off to the possibility of something greater. Now I knew the truth, and it humbled me to my core. The first person I told about my experience was my sister, Emily. She had always been the spiritual one in the family, attending church regularly and trying to share her faith with me. I had dismissed her beliefs countless times, but now I needed her guidance. As I recounted the vision to her, I saw tears streaming down her face. "Michael," she said, "I've been praying for you for years. I always knew God was working on your heart." Her words hit me like a wave. Even in my disbelief, I had been surrounded by people who cared about me enough to pray for my soul. Sharing my story with Emily gave me the courage to open up to others. I started with close friends, people who knew me well enough to understand how deeply this experience had affected me. Some listened with curiosity, others with skepticism. "It sounds like your brain was playing tricks on you," one friend said. "A near-death experience can't prove God exists." His response stung, but I didn't argue. Instead, I simply told him, "I can't explain it to you in a way that makes sense, but I know what I saw, and I know it was real." One of the hardest parts of this journey was confronting my own doubts. Even after experiencing the light and hearing the voice, there were moments when my old skepticism crept back in. Was it possible that my mind had created the vision as a way to cope with death? But every time I questioned it, I remembered the love I felt in the presence of the light. That love wasn't something my mind could have invented. It was too pure, too overwhelming, too real. It became my anchor when doubt threatened to pull me under. As I shared my story with more people, I began to notice something surprising. Even those who didn't believe in God seemed touched by the message. They might not have accepted the full reality of my experience, but they were intrigued by the idea of second chances, of living with more purpose and intention. "Whether or not I believe in God," one co-worker said, "your story makes me want to be a better person." Hearing that reminded me that the impact of my experience wasn't limited to me. It had the potential to ripple outward and touch others in ways I couldn't predict. The vision also forced me to reevaluate my priorities. Before, my life had been centered on success, logic, and personal achievement. Now, I saw the emptiness in those pursuits when they weren't grounded in something greater. I began to focus on the things that truly mattered: my relationships, acts of kindness, and living with integrity. I started volunteering at a local shelter, not because I felt obligated, but because I wanted to reflect the love I had experienced in the light. Each small act of service felt like a way to honor the second chance I had been given. One of the most profound changes was the way I saw people. Before, I had often dismissed those with faith as naive or uncritical thinkers. Now, I saw their courage, their openness to something greater than themselves. I began to understand that faith wasn't a weakness. It was a strength, a willingness to trust in what couldn't be fully understood. And that trust, I realized, was what had been missing in my own life. As I continued to reflect on the experience, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I had been given a second chance, not just to live, but to live differently. The message I had been given wasn't just for me, it was for everyone. No one is too far gone, the voice had said. It is never too late to turn back. Those words became my mantra, the foundation of the new life I was building. Now every day feels like a gift, an opportunity to live with purpose and to share the truth I was shown. I still face challenges and doubts, but they no longer define me. Instead, I hold on to the love I experienced in the light, knowing that it is always there, waiting for anyone who is willing to seek it. Returning to my everyday life after such a profound experience felt like stepping into a world that no longer fit. Physically, I was recovering from the heart attack, going through the motions of doctor's visits, medication adjustments, and cautious steps back into my routine. But emotionally and spiritually, I was grappling with a reality that had completely shifted. How could I go back to the life I had built when I now understood how incomplete it had been? The first challenge was facing my own pride. For years, I had dismissed people of faith as naive or uncritical, clinging to their beliefs because they were too afraid to face the truth. Now, I realized how arrogant I had been. My skepticism hadn't been rooted in logic, it had been rooted in fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of surrendering control, fear of admitting that I wasn't the center of my own universe. That realization was humbling, but it was also liberating. Letting go of that pride allowed me to approach life with a new sense of openness and curiosity. The second challenge was sharing my story. I knew I had to tell others about what I had experienced. The voice had been clear about that. But every time I thought about opening up, I hesitated. Would people believe me? Would they think I was crazy? For someone who had spent his life rooted in logic and reason, the thought of being dismissed as irrational was almost unbearable. But then I remembered the wandering souls I had seen in the vision, the place of separation where people longed for the light they had rejected. That memory gave me the courage to speak. I started small, sharing my experience with close friends and family. My sister Emily was my biggest supporter, encouraging me to keep going even when conversations didn't go as planned. Not everyone responded positively. Some people listened politely but seemed skeptical, while others dismissed it outright. "It sounds like a dream," one friend said. "Maybe your brain was just processing the trauma." Those words stung, but I reminded myself that my job wasn't to convince anyone. It was to share the truth and let them decide what to do with it. As I continued to share my story, I began to see small ripples of impact. A co-worker who had always avoided conversations about faith pulled me aside one day. "I've been thinking about what you said," she told me. "I don't know if I believe in God, but your story made me realize I've been living on autopilot. I want to change that." That moment reminded me that even if people didn't fully accept my experience, the message still had the power to inspire them to reflect on their own lives. The third challenge was internal, learning to live differently. Before, my life had been about control, achievement, and personal success. Now I understood that those things, while not inherently bad, weren't the ultimate goal. Life was about connection to others, to purpose, and to something greater than myself. I began to prioritize relationships, spending more time with family, and reaching out to friends I had lost touch with. I also started volunteering at a local community center, helping with food drives and mentoring young people. These weren't grand gestures, but they felt meaningful, like steps toward reflecting the love I had experienced in the light. Despite these changes, the journey wasn't without setbacks. There were days when doubt crept back in, whispering that maybe it had all been a hallucination or a trick of the brain. But every time those thoughts surfaced, I returned to the memory of the light, the love, the warmth, the undeniable truth of that presence. That memory became my anchor, reminding me of what I had seen and why it mattered. One of the most surprising challenges was learning to forgive myself. The vision had shown me the ripple effects of my actions, the times I had hurt others, missed opportunities to be kind, or let pride get in the way of connection. At first, those memories filled me with regret. But then, I remembered the voice's words. It is never too late to turn back. That message wasn't just about returning to God. It was about choosing to live differently, starting now. Forgiving myself allowed me to embrace the second chance I had been given. As I continue this journey, I've come to see challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities to grow. Every conversation, every doubt, every choice is a chance to reflect the light I experienced and to honor the love that saved me. I don't have all the answers, and I still make mistakes, but I wake up each day with a renewed sense of purpose, asking myself, how can I make today count? That question keeps me moving forward, even when the path is uncertain. As I sit here reflecting on my journey, I'm struck by how much my life has changed since that day. Before my heart attack, I thought I had all the answers. I believed in science, logic, and the tangible, and I dismissed anything that couldn't be proven or measured. But the truth I experienced during those moments of death shattered my certainty. It showed me a reality that was greater than anything I could comprehend. Reality rooted in love, connection, and purpose. The light I encountered wasn't just a symbol or a feeling. It was real, alive, and personal. It knew me completely, flaws and all, and loved me unconditionally. That love didn't condemn me for my disbelief. It invited me to see the truth and to live differently. I had spent my life rejecting the very thing that had been waiting for me all along, and yet I was given a second chance to turn back. One of the most profound lessons I've learned is that no one is too far gone. No matter how many mistakes you've made, how much doubt you've carried, or how far you've strayed, there's always a way back. The voice I heard in the light said it perfectly. It is never too late to turn back. That message has become the foundation of how I live my life now. It's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about being willing to take the first step, no matter where you are. Another lesson I've carried with me is the importance of every choice we make. During the vision, I saw the ripple effects of my actions, both good and bad, and how they had shaped the lives of those around me. That understanding has changed the way I approach my daily life. I've learned that even the smallest acts of kindness, patience, or forgiveness can create ripples of light in the world. And those ripples matter more than we realize. Sharing my story hasn't been easy, but it's been one of the most rewarding parts of this journey. There are still people who doubt or dismiss what I've experienced, and that's okay. My job isn't to convince anyone. It's to share the truth as I've seen it, and to trust that the message will reach those who need to hear it. Even if one person finds hope or inspiration in my story, it's worth it. Now, every day feels like an opportunity to honor the second chance I've been given. I don't have all the answers, and I still face challenges and doubts, but I approach life with a sense of gratitude and purpose that I never had before. I've learned to let go of the need for control and to trust in something greater than myself. That trust has brought me peace, even in the midst of uncertainty. So, I want to leave you with this. If you've ever doubted, if you've ever felt like something is missing, or if you've ever wondered if there's more to life, know this: you're not alone. The light I experienced is for everyone, and it's always there, waiting for you to turn toward it. No matter where you are or what you've been through, it's never too late to take that first step. If this story has touched you, I encourage you to share it with someone who might need to hear it. Together, we can create ripples of hope, love, and truth in a world that desperately needs them. Thank you for listening, and I hope that in some small way, my journey inspires you to begin your own. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to this channel for more stories like this one. Together, we can spread hope, inspire change, and remind people that it's never too late to find their way back to the light.